in keeping with the tradition of starting my year off with a horror movie viewing, the first movie viewing of 2024 for me in the books. I just went and saw Night Swim. Now, last year, I think 2023, I saw Megan. I can't remember what was the year before. Megan popped off to some acclaim, and that's the reason why is my thing. Yeah, Megan kicked off to some acclaim last year, which is the reason why I went and watched it with a friend of mine. This year, I had heard a few things about Night Swim. I didn't really know. Like, I went into it cold. I had no idea what the movie was about. All I had heard about it prior to going into actually seeing it was that it was a fun movie in an unintentional way. So, like, I was very curious about this. Sounds like the kind of movies that are right up my alley, for the most part. And I started my year off with COVID. So, though that first week and a half of 2024 so far has been pretty brutal, but I'm over it now. I'm healthy, knock on wood, that stays that way. And I decided, hey, let's kick this off right. Let's go catch this movie. What an experience. I don't know. I still don't really know what the hell I just watched, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. It stars Wyatt Russell, old John Walker from, we saw that dude once in Falcon and Winter Soldier in the MCU. And that was like damn near 4 years ago. I guess 3 years ago, technically. I think it was 2001 when that show dropped. And they hadn't done shit with that guy since. Like, he hasn't had a cameo in a movie or in another TV show. They just straight up dropped that dude and then nothing. Like, not even, I guess the same could be said for every character in that show. Did Bucky come back in any capacity? I don't think Sam has. Like, they just completely evaporated off the face of the earth, and God knows when we'll see those dudes next. So it was interesting seeing him pop up because I didn't know he was in it. And Wyatt Russell's a great actor, and he was definitely the best part of this movie. Like, I understand where all the unintentionality of the humor came from, because the premise behind this movie is, I was gonna say it's whack, and I guess it is, but I get where it was coming from. So, spoiler alerts if you're looking to go see it ice cold, and I kind of recommend that you do. That you may want to bounce on this video and come back to it after. But I'm getting into the spoiler territory right now. So, the movie is about this family, and really the best way I could describe it is it's like Amityville Horror with a pool. It's just Amityville Pool. But it stars this family starring Wyatt Russell as the patriarch. He's a former baseball player who had to bow out due to illness. I think they say what the illness is, but I forget. I forget exactly what it is, but it's preventing him from being able to play ball. And it's degenerating. His health is degenerating. He's down and out. He's depressed and whatnot. But he and his family are moving into this house. And this house has a pool. And a part of the selling point of the pool is that he could use swimming as a form of physical therapy to help build up his strength again. So they go to this house. First of all, like, a lot of like the exposition around the pool, they don't really, and I give them credit for that, they don't ever really get into what's going on with the pool at the beginning. But they have like a pool guy, like a pool cleaner come by. And this is the part of the movie where at first I was like, wait, is the movie in on the joke? Like, does it know what it's doing? Or was this supposed to be taken seriously? Because literally everyone in the theater that I was in when I watched this laughed when this pool guy was giving like this exposition, this mysterious exposition about, like, you know, he was talking about nature and like this weird shamanistic kind of tone. It seems weird, and like the guy just didn't seem like an old wizened, you know, shaman or naturalist or anything. He looked like a scruggly plumber. And he's sitting here at the pool just with the camera, this weird dramatic shot where he's just kind of gazing off into the middle distance on a close-up while another character is kind of in the background. And he's like, it's interesting how the water throws us out and blah, blah, blah. I forget exactly what he's saying, but it's like really philosophical in a way that was silly. And people responded that way. So that was the first part of the movie where I was like, is the movie actually in on this? Like, is this a joke? Hi, Gob. I see you. You're sneaking in. You're sneaking in. You can't hide from me. Uh-oh, you're going to the litter box. Are you about to drop a bomb in there? Do I need to light a candle? I might have to light a candle. At that point, you know, they start talking about how, I skipped forward a little bit. The movie starts off, the cold open is this girl, takes place in 1992. This little girl is swimming in this pool. and she gets sucked under by some mysterious force and disappears, ostensibly dies. This is my first encounter with this scene was where I was like, wait a second. I know how a lot of these types of haunted house horror movies kind of are birthed in their ideation stage. And a lot of it is just somebody being like, hey, I know a house we can shoot a movie at, right? And I kind of get the sense that maybe this was like, hey, this house I know of a house that has a nice pool we can shoot a movie at. And they were like, well, what kind of movie can we shoot? We can shoot a haunted house horror movie, but how can we make it different? Well, what if it was a haunted pool? And okay, I'm on board. But when that opening scene, all of the shots of horror or of tension, I guess scary moments, they were all just the girl splashing around the water. It was just a girl splashing in the water. And they did the same trick like a million times in the movie where it was a shot in the water and you would see a person standing outside of the water, and whoever was in the water would see the person, and they would swim up and they would splash to the surface and they'd start talking, but then immediately realize nobody's there. The person that they saw is gone. And it's like, okay, the first time they did it, sure, but and the first time they did it was the cold open with that girl. But then every other time that there is a moment of horror in the pool, they use that trick over and over again. And that's when I started to suspect, like, is this movie just going to be like an hour and a half of people splashing around the water and we never really get to see, quote unquote, the monster? Spoiler alert, that is not the case. You do get to see the monster, but honestly, it looks so goofy that it probably would have been better. No, you know what? Scratch that. It's definitely better you get to see it. Because by the time you see the monster, everybody in the theater is in on the joke of this movie. There is a lot of really hilarious lines. I don't think they were meant to be hilarious. I didn't get the sense that the movie was like purposely going that route, but there was a lot that happened in the movie as it's like kind of building up its tension and all of that the ridiculousness of the premise really made none of it seem tense or scary, and all of it just seemed over the top or ridiculous. So Wyatt Russell's family moves into that house some years later after that girl disappears. He decides to start using the pool as a form of physical therapy. And, you know, when they talk to this pool cleaner guy, that's when he drops the exposition-ish. It's a little bit of a half reveal of what's going on about how the pool is a spring-fed pool, so it's natural water. There are all sorts of springs in the area that flows natural water into that pool. And that's when he starts getting into the mysticism about nature and blah, blah, blah. There's trying to feed this idea that there's something supernatural about the springs, the source of the spring that's feeding water into the pool. So fast forward a bit. Wyatt Russell's character is doing PT and he's getting better, and the doctor can't figure out why. She's like, somehow you're getting better, and this is the moment where I think in the theater there was a turn, because you know Wyatt Russell's character is getting this news and he's happy about it. Like throughout the entirety of the movie, he's been kind of downtrodden and sad about his lot in life. But now that he's getting this good news, like you can see it on his face, like he starts to cheer up, he starts to smile, and like the doctor is like, we can't figure out like how this turnaround happened. And he just very, very straight face, very straightforward, like just, you know, so satisfied, self-satisfied look on his face where he just goes, we got a pool. But he said it in such a great way. I can't do the delivery justice, but he said it in such a way the entire theater just cracked up. And from then on, it was just, you know, it was on. The game was afoot, and characters came in with unintentionally funny lines and unintentionally funny moments, and none of it ever really seemed like it was trying to ever play up to its horror billing, because ultimately, there was nothing scary or threatening about the pool. It really was just people splashing around in a pool. And, you know, there was never anything like, whenever something supernatural happened to the pool, it was always more like, how the hell is this happening? More than it was anything else. Like, there are moments where the pool suddenly is like 200 feet deep, and they're like swimming deep down into the pool. And I guess there's some supernatural occurrence that happens that allows for for these things to take place, and suspend your disbelief, sure, but because this entire movie is about this pool, and there's really nothing else going on to like to feed your need to see some sort of tension and action, because it's all just based in this pool. You can't help but kind of have these kinds of thoughts and nitpick on weird things about what's happening with the pool here or there. Ultimately, it is an Amityville Horror kind of situation, where in Amityville Horror, the dad goes crazy and then tries to kill his family and all that sort of stuff. In this one, it's a little bit different, but ultimately the father character gets possessed and then he becomes the physical manifestation of whatever is haunting the pool, and then like his turn, going after his family, is the only part of the movie that actually feels like this is supposed to be the tense horror slasher thriller whatever that this movie was supposed to be. But it's such a short part of the movie, and it happens at like the very tail end, that by the time you get to it, and there's so much other unintentionally silly stuff that happens that leads up to that by the time it happens, it's too little, it's too late, and the vibe of the movie is already comedy. So it's still fine. That particular moment where the dad turns and all that's still fine for what it is, but it doesn't save the movie from being just like a really silly, campy movie. It was weird, right? Like, I got the sense that everybody else in the theater liked the movie for being so silly. And that's kind of my vibe too. Like, it's not a good movie, but it is a silly movie, and you can have fun with it if you don't take it seriously. Again, I went into it without knowing a single thing about it, and I'm very glad for that. I'm very happy for it. I did a review of Megan on my TikTok for my 31 days of horror movie reviews for October. And I talked about how I didn't really care too much for it. Like, it was okay, but nothing really special. I do like this movie more than Megan. I will say that. Like, Megan is probably a better movie as far as how it's put together, and maybe its premise makes a little bit more sense. Maybe the action scenes, the slasher moments, maybe there's a little bit more tension. But this movie just felt like it was having more fun. I had more fun with this movie. Maybe in a way that the writer and director didn't intend, but hey, you know what? You can't always get what you want in that regard. So long as somebody's enjoying what you put out, that should ultimately be, the satisfier. I enjoyed it, and I certainly enjoyed it more than I did Megan. So it's a weird situation, right? Like, okay, it probably wasn't what you wanted, but you can have fun with this movie if you keep your expectations low, right? I enjoyed it. It's a bad movie, but it can be a fun movie. This thing is 24% on Rotten Tomatoes, the 43% audience score. So yeah, and you know what? Despite what I just said, I don't disagree with either of these. And if you ask me which one I sided on more, both. They're both fine. Like, I think both are true. Night Swim has a few creepy scenes, but overall, this suburban horror story is too bland and predictable to be really scary. I mean, it's not really. I mean, it is bland and predictable, but it's just silly. It's really more silly than it is anything else. And I do think that Wyatt Russell's character, his acting, and like, he stole the movie as far as, as much as one can steal a movie like this. I remember his character and his scenes more than anyone else's. He's great in it. I legit think that without him, this probably would have been a much worse movie. And a lot of that just comes from that moment where he goes, "We got a pool." Like, everyone cracked up. There were a few moments in this movie where people had some real laughs. The film's origins goes back to 2014 when Bryce McGuire wrote and directed his low-budget 5-minute 2014 short film of the same name in collaboration with his friend Rod Blackhurst, which he filmed in the backyard of musician Michelle Branch. What? Okay, so was this Michelle Branch's house? It starred Megalyn, can't pronounce that name, Etchikunwoke, Megalyn Etchi Konwook in the lead role, which would inspire the character of Izzy Waller in the future versions. McGuire cited Blumhouse's own films, as well as others such as Poltergeist, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Jaws, Christie, The Eye of the Hunter, and The Abyss as the film's source of inspiration. I didn't catch any of that. Maybe Creature from the Black Lagoon. Certainly not. Well, I guess there was a haunting, so if you want to call Poltergeist, I guess you can. Jaws? No. Just because there's water? Christine? What, the car? Okay, I guess maybe because it's a pool that's haunted instead of a car. The Abyss. Yeah, I can see that too. He also describes the film as a semi-autobiographical. What? Semi-autobiographical in connection to his childhood and adolescence, saying, growing up in Florida, surrounded by ocean on three sides, in a climate that could only be survived by partaking in water ritual, knowing friends who drowned, hurricanes that flooded homes, boating accidents, shark attacks, you come to have a kind of fear and reverence for the water. I saw the movie Jaws when I was 10 years old. We had a swimming pool at the time, and I remember treading water by myself at night when my younger brother turned the lights out. Even though I knew the pool was only 9 feet deep, Jesus, that's still deep for a fucking kid, and 18 feet wide, I was certain beyond any doubt that the water was an abyss and something horrible was rising towards me from the depths. Yes, this is how, okay, I understand this dude 1,000,000%, because this is how I feel also. Didn't grow up in Florida, but I was raised for some time in Okinawa, Japan. And the Japanese view of the sea is much different than most Westerners' view of the sea, speaking generally. It's darker, it's grimmer. There's a history of really bad things that come from the ocean, as far as tsunamis, typhoons, foreign invaders. Like the water is, it's as cruel as it is kind. Like there's a culture of cultivating life from the water there for sure, with fisheries and all of that. But there's a lot of darkness that comes with the water, and for certain, this idea of like, the something horrible rising from the unknown abyss beneath you. I feel that about deep water too. The deep ocean is a terrifying place to be for that very reason. So I understand exactly where this dude's coming from in his descriptions of the water like that, which kind of makes it weird because I guess maybe whatever happened to him in that pool there must have been like a really striking formative memory, like a core memory to him, and he kind of wanted to sort of exercise that on screen in this script, which I understand. But the chief problem I had with this movie, at least, is that there's only so much, and I don't know, what is the budget of this movie? I'm actually really curious about what the budget of this movie is. 15 million. Godzilla -1 really broke my brain, because I see that Godzilla -1 had a budget of, quote, under 15 million, which probably means 14.5 million or something. But I see that as a movie with a $15 million budget, and I'm like, this looks just as good and just as epic as any $200 million Marvel movie. I don't understand how they managed to make this movie look this good and this epic on such a small budget. I was watching this movie thinking, oh, they must have shot this movie for like 15 grand. Cause, I mean, other than maybe the salary of Wyatt Russell, wasn't a lot going on in this visually. Like there were really three locations as far as I could tell. There was the house with the pool, there was a baseball field, and there was a doctor's office. And the baseball field and doctor's office are both things that aren't super costly, and they didn't have really long scenes there. And it wasn't like there was a lot of going back and forth in between all of them. I think it was just one scene in the doctor's office. No, there was maybe two scenes. There was one downtrodden scene in the doctor's office, and then there was the scene where he's like, "We got a pool," and then there was only one in the baseball field. So it's not like there were a whole lot of scenes. It's not that there was like a lot of scenery going on. The entire thing was basically shot in that pool, which makes me wonder, like, 15 million? Like, where did that money go? Again, and this was the reason I kind of got sidetracked with the budget here is, and I was going into it based off of this guy trying to reinterpret a traumatized experience of his childhood on film, with respects to water, open water, the deep abyss. And maybe you know what, some of that budget probably went to shooting those deep water scenes at some soundstage somewhere. A lot of the movie, a lot of the action pieces that take place, or like the dramatic moments that take place around the pool, again, it's just someone splashing around the pool. It's not like, and there are costumes for creatures that occur, but they don't look particularly great. Like, people were giggling and laughing when the monsters showed up. Like, that's probably not the response they were hoping for. But it was literally like people were laughing as soon as like a monster with a big googly eye pops up. I feel like why make this about a pool? I guess you could make it about a pool too, but I feel like make it about the ocean. You make because the ocean is inherently, you could make there's some terrifying shots of the ocean. Like, I've been all over the North Sea TikTok trend where it has those deep voice singers. Yo ho, all hands, hoist the banners high. Those dudes. And then, like, they're showing all of the crazy, genuinely terrifying shots of like 20-foot waves crashing alongside boats and shit. That's scary to me. Like, shoot something based around the ocean in a manner that really portrays the vibe that you're going for of deep, scary, mysterious, etc. Now, I know that kind of portrays the point of his story, which is that he got that feeling from a pool, right? Like, you know, when you're 8 years old or something, it doesn't need to be a sprawling ocean to be scary and dangerous. It could be as deep as a 9-foot pool. You know, like, everything to a kid is much more terrifying. And I understand that. And I think you could do that too, in a very compelling manner. And the movie kind of, in some shots, does that. But I think maybe I don't know, that maybe it was just that there was too many adults, that kind of the movie was more about them than it was the kids. If it was maybe more about from the point of view of, you know, a kid who was having these traumatizing experiences in the pool, then maybe that lands a bit harder. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure what the issue there is for me. But ultimately, how it manifests is a movie that, you know, if it's trying to portray the terrifying nature of water, basically, be it deep ocean water, the mysterious abyss, or a 9-foot pool that a kid gets terrified in when the lights go out, I feel like it failed. I feel like it failed in portraying that, possibly because there just wasn't enough put on screen to really show me what's scary about it, right? Like, ultimately, for us watching, we know it's just a pool. Like, oh, it's a pool. It's hard to be scary when it's just a pool in someone's backyard. For us, you know, as, you know, adults watching this movie, I guess. And I don't know what you could do to kind of break out of that mindset for, you know, somebody just watching a movie about dudes splashing around in a pool. I really don't know. That's going to be within budget, I guess, a $15 million budget. But again, Godzilla Minus One broke my brain. I watched that and I'm like, you could do anything with a $15 million budget, apparently. So I don't know. I mean, I guess ultimately what it comes down to for me in the end of the day for this movie is the premise had potential. The cast had potential. And I think that Wyatt Russell was the best part of this movie. He did a genuinely great job. Everybody else was good too, but he, in my view, stole it. I think the execution faltered by way of maybe trying to tell too serious a story in what turned out to be unserious of a venue. And I think that's why people were laughing, right? It's kind of like, I mentioned it when I was talking about Rebel Moon, how I was thinking about Jimon Hanshu's character in Gran Turismo instead of his character in Rebel Moon, because Rebel Moon kind of sucks. And I was watching both of those movies at the same time. Well, not at the same time, but I watched one, then I watched the other. And I mentioned how his character as the dad in Gran Turismo, like, was so intensely serious. Like, he was acting his fucking ass off in that movie, like watering eyes and pleading to his son, driving a race car is dangerous, and it was so serious in a movie that didn't seem like it had that kind of weight. Like, it was a movie that felt like it was trying to be Ford versus Ferrari for Monster Energy drinking gamer nerds, right? He felt like he was delivering for Ford versus Ferrari. And that juxtaposition just made the rest of the movie feel sillier. Like, this guy's acting way out of this movie's class, and it's just making everything, it's bringing out, the warts of everything else around. That's kind of the issue with Night Swim, whereas the premise is kind of betrayed by what I perceive as the unseriousness of the dangers of just a pool in someone's backyard. Again, this guy's talking from the perspective of someone who grew up with a healthy fear of the water and the sea, having lived in Florida, which I can relate to, having grown up with a healthy fear of the water and the sea, having lived in Okinawa, Japan. So it's not even like I don't get where he's coming from or what he's trying to do. I just think that shooting it, putting it on film is trickier. And it's not even necessarily the fault of the pool. I think there was just maybe too much. I don't know. It's so hard. This is such a weird movie to dissect. I really would like to know what it is about it, because people were laughing at this movie up and down. Like, the premise is silly, but I understand where it's coming from. That's where I'm having a problem. The premise of the movie is silly, but I totally understand where he's coming from with this. Like, it's a unique understanding to me, because I also had a similar. I almost drowned as a kid in a pool. My uncle had to save me. He pulled me out of the water. And, from then on, I had kind of a healthy fear of the water. I still went swimming and stuff, but drowning is one of my deepest fears. So, like, I get where this guy is coming from in so many different levels, but I just don't understand why I don't take it seriously and everybody else. It's not just me. It's not to be taken seriously when you watch it on screen. It's a problem, I think. Well, I don't even think it's a problem. I had fun watching it. It made me laugh. And maybe that was part of it. Let me read a little bit more, making sure. Is it a horror comedy? Yeah, it's just called a supernatural horror. So it doesn't even seem like they were trying to have a comedic angle to it. At the end of the day, Night Swim was an experience. It ended up turning into, and again, I went in not knowing anything about this movie, and it ended up turning into like kind of a low-key sort of The Room type of viewing experience where everybody was in on the joke. It almost seemed like the film was in on the joke too, but although I guess based off of a cursory amount of research, maybe it wasn't. I had fun. It was a fine movie, I guess, for that reason, but I do agree with the critic and audience Rotten Tomato scores on this one. It's not great, but I think you should still see it because you can have fun. And I say it all the time. You can still have fun with bad movies, and you can have fun with this one. So that's my take on that. See you guys later.